Coming up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon, international media outlets strongly denounced Japanese politicians' visits to the controversial Yasukuni shrine on Thursday, saying Tokyo's lack of remorse for its past aggressions have angered neighboring countries. A key witness to the parliamentary probe into the spy agency's alleged meddling in last year's presidential election, former Seoul police chief Kim Yong-pan attends today's hearing. Another witness, ex-spy chief Won Sei-hoon, has agreed to appear later today. Plus, the United Nations has hastily arranged a closed-door discussion on the Egyptian government's brutal crackdown on pro-Morsy supporters that killed more than 600 people. U.S. President Barack Obama has denounced the violence. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Chae Yusan here in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom.
We're getting reports now that the South Korean government officially proposed the two Koreas hold Red Cross talks on August 23rd to discuss holding a reunion for Korean families separated by the Korean War.
And of course, we'll have all the details coming up on that in our upcoming newscasts later in the day. Now, we're going to switch to Japan's latest act of insensitivity. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has drawn fresh criticism from media outlets around the world for allowing his cabinet members to visit the controversial Yasukuni shrine, which honors Japan's war dead, including around a dozen Class A war criminals.
Tokyo also failed to express remorse and sincere mourning for Japan's past aggressions this year, marking the country's surrender in World War II. Our Connie Lee reports.
The visit of 3 Japanese cabinet members to the Yasukuni shrine in Tokyo on Thursday has raised critical reviews of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe from the foreign media. Germany's daily paper Der Tagesspiegel stated that Abe's irresponsible actions of allowing his top officials to visit the shrine incited protests and criticism from neighboring countries like Korea and China. The report said that Japan had never truly made amends for invading and occupying the territories in the early 20th century. French daily Le Monde, in a report, said that the shrine visit, which glorifies Japan's past militarism, provoked the protests by neighboring countries. It also revealed that although Abe did not visit the shrine himself, he made a personal offering to it. Meanwhile, French news agency AFP noted that Abe broke away from practices of former prime ministers by omitting any expression of remorse over Japan's past military aggression in a speech on Thursday, which marked the 68th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. The Washington Post, in an article, said that Abe strategically avoided visiting the Yasukuni shrine to try to reduce diplomatic tensions, but then showed his support for Japan's imperialistic past by sending officials in his place and making an offering from his private funds. Looking forward, the report added that the way Abe addresses Japan's history will affect relations not just with Korea and China, but also with the U.S., who wants Japan to reduce the regional tensions. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Seoul and Pyongyang's recent breakthrough on their joint Kaesong factory zone is raising new hopes for a possible resumption of the six-party nuclear talks, which have been stalled for nearly 5 years. Kim Yong-gil has more.
Experts predict that with the recent progress in the inter-Korean talks, North Korea may show willingness to come back to the negotiating table to discuss achieving denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. Such positive signs, they say, may create an environment in which the 6 participating states are able to sit down at the negotiating table. Promoting further talks between South and North Korea will likely help open communication channels between North Korea and the U.S. China, which has been the chair to 6-party talks, may undergo negotiations behind doors to bring North Korea back to the table. Experts speculate China may make this move when the annual Ulchi Freedom Guardian military exercise between South Korea and the U.S. ends on August 30th. The multilateral nuclear talks were created after North Korea withdrew from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 2003. However, the 5 countries aside from North Korea show clear differences with Pyongyang on how to resolve its nuclear issues, and the success of the 6-party talks will hinge upon whether the communist state will be willing to scrap its nuclear programs. North Korea has been insisting on opening nuclear arms reduction talks under the premise that the communist state be recognized as a nuclear power. Meanwhile, South Korea and the U.S. have been demanding that the North suspend its uranium enrichment program, declare a moratorium on nuclear and missile testing, and allow nuclear inspectors back into the reclusive state. Kim Yong-pan, Arirang News.
At the National Assembly here in Seoul, a hearing is underway to question 2 former public officials accused of abusing their authority to meddle in last year's presidential election. Former National Intelligence Service Director Won Sei-hoon and former Seoul Metropolitan Police Chief Kim Yong-pan are the 2 witnesses summoned for Friday's hearing. Kim has appeared on time for the session, but Won plans to come in later today at 2 p.m. Won has been indicted for ordering a smear online campaign to sway public opinion in favor of the ruling party before the December 19th election. Kim also awaits trial on charges of whitewashing a police probe into the NIS scandal before that election. Kim, however, is denying all charges against him and refused to take oath as a witness at the questioning, which is very rare. Prosecutors began searching the National Archives of Korea this Friday morning as part of an investigation into the missing transcript of the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit. The prosecutors will first search the offline library, which consists of books and CDs, and a system called PAMS that permanently stores presidential documents. Should the prosecutors fail to find the summit transcript, they will redirect their investigation into whether the former Roh Moo-hyun or Lee Myung-bak administration misplaced the transcript. The transcript has become a political hot potato after the ruling party claimed former President Roh agreed in 2007 to give up the de facto maritime border during summit talks with then North Korean leader Kim Jong-il.
Korea's producer prices fell for the 10th straight month in July, another sign of the nation's weak inflation. The Bank of Korea said Friday that last month's producer prices dropped 0.9% from the same period a year earlier. The central bank said a whopping 10% drop in metal prices led the overall contraction in producer prices last month. Korea's consumer prices, meanwhile, remained in the 1% range for the 9th straight month in July, running far below the central bank's 2.5% to 3.5% target band. As President Park Geun-hye pushes to promote fair competition as part of her so-called economic democratization, Korea's #1 internet company, Naver, has been coming under fire for allegedly abusing its power. Our Yulian reports.
This service called Memo This allows users to stick a memo on any website. Take, for instance, this YouTube page that shows an ad for Apple's iPhone. A user can post a video of Samsung's Galaxy ad as a memo right next to it, so when other Memo This users visit the page, they can directly compare the two. The startup company that developed this service says they got off to a good start in 2009 after acquiring a number of patents abroad. But Naver, Korea's major portal website, shut down the service on its website back in 2011, saying only that it disrupted Naver's business model. And ever since, the company has been posting about a $9,000 deficit each month.
There's no point in coming up with an innovative service if there's no way to reach the consumers. We've been stripped of our chance to compete fairly.
Naver can have this effect on companies because of its dominance over the web in Korea. Ever since Naver operator NHN was established back in 1999, the company has grown at an exponential speed, with annual profits spiking to over $2 billion last year. Naver now holds over 70% of the search engine market share in the country. But lately, the company has become the center of public scrutiny after being accused of abusing its power. Under President Park Geun-hye's drive to foster a fairer business environment for smaller businesses, the Fair Trade Commission launched an investigation into Naver for anti-competitive practices. And the ruling Saenuri Party is to introduce a regulation law for Naver next month. NHN declined repeated requests for an interview, only reiterating what CEO Kim Sang-won said earlier this week. Kim vowed to continue to work closely with related government officials, but also expressed hope that the government does not rush to create regulations that could limit the company from competing globally. Yuri-an, Arirang News.
Korean Air has agreed to cough up tens of millions of dollars to settle a U.S. class action lawsuit for alleged price fixing. Korea's largest airline company agreed to a $65 million settlement deal to end the case. $39 million will be paid out in cash and the rest in gift certificates on October 25th. A group of passengers claim Korean Air worked hand in hand with Asiana Airlines to set artificially high prices for air travel between Korea and the US between January 2000 and August 2007.
For your fill of Korean and international news, join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
The UN Security Council has urged all parties in Egypt to show maximum restraint following days of violence which have seen more than 600 people killed and around 4,000 injured. The latest bloodshed erupted between security forces and supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi, and is by far the worst violence seen in the country since the revolution that toppled Hosni Mubarak in 2011. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The eyes of the international community are focused on Egypt after government forces stormed civilian camps with armored bulldozers. In the latest violence Thursday, supporters and members of Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood set fire to a government building near Cairo, while funerals were being held by families and friends of the fallen. This comes a day after at least 638 people were killed as security forces were given the green light to use live ammunition to break up the camps of pro-Morsy activists. The protesters have been staging sit-ins for weeks demanding the reinstatement of overthrown President Mohamed Morsi, who was ousted by the army last month.
A friend of mine's brother passed away and I came to visit him and to help him as far as the legal paperwork for processing the body. It was told that he can't release the body unless he signs that he died of natural causes, and of course he's unwilling to do that because he was shot in the chest yesterday at Rabaa al-Adawiyah.
U.S. President Barack Obama condemned the latest violence in Egypt and canceled a joint military exercise that was to be held between the two countries. The U.S. State Department also says it will review aid to Egypt, quote, in all forms, which includes the $1.3 billion worth of aid Washington sends to Egypt every year.
We've sustained our commitment to Egypt and its people. But while we want to sustain our relationship with Egypt, our traditional cooperation cannot continue as usual when civilians are being killed in the streets and rights are being rolled back.
Morsi, Egypt's first democratically elected president, has been held in detention since his ousting on July 3rd. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
UN inspectors are soon expected to arrive in Syria to investigate the suspected use of chemical weapons there. The UN team is to visit 3 sites over the next 2 weeks, including the northern town of Khan al-Assal, which is at the center of the allegations. Over 25 people died in the town in March in an alleged chemical weapons attack. The other 2 locations subject to the investigation have not been disclosed. Meanwhile, the crisis in Syria appears to be spilling over to neighboring Lebanon. At least 18 people were killed and some 200 wounded Thursday after a large explosion ripped through a Hezbollah stronghold in Beirut. Watchers say the suspected car bomb attack could have been in retaliation for Hezbollah supporting Syrian government forces against the rebels in Syria. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is appealing for more funds to urgently provide food, health care, and sanitation to the North Korean people. In a statement released by his office Thursday, Ban said the UN needs $98 million to pay for aid programs in North Korea this year. Citing estimates that almost 1/3 of children under the age of 5 in North Korea suffer from chronic malnutrition, the statement stresses humanitarian assistance should not be linked to political or security concerns related to Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions.
The North Korean freighter that was detained by Panama last month for shipping undeclared military equipment from Cuba could face a fine of up to $1 million. AFP reports the fines imposed by Panamanian authorities range from $10,000 to $100,000 for serious violations and go as high as $1 million for very serious violations, adding that Panama officials said this was a very serious case. A group of UN inspectors is currently in Panama to determine whether North Korea violated a UN ban against arms shipments. Positive economic data out of the United States is raising speculation the Federal Reserve may be one step closer to tapering off its massive bond buying program. The U.S. Labor Department says first-time applications for state unemployment benefits dropped 15,000 to 320,000 last month, the lowest level since October 2007. The jobless rate now stands at 4.5-year low of 7.4%. The department's Consumer Price Index, a key indicator of inflation, also advanced 2% on year in July. The Fed says it will taper off its monetary stimulus program when the job market improves and inflation picks up steam. Now, as Korea continues to sweat under scorching temperatures, it's not just the number of heat stroke patients that are on the rise. More and more people are showing symptoms of so-called air conditioning-itis, as they're unable to cope with the huge temperature differences between the indoors and outdoors. Our Kim Min-ji tells us the symptoms and ways to prevent yourself falling victim.
During the hot summer months, life without air conditioning is unimaginable. And workplaces are not an exception. Suffering from lack of sleep due to tropical nights, employees come to work with headaches and are unable to concentrate.
I have a headache and sore throat. My overall condition is not so good.
Long hours of air conditioning can also reduce the humidity in a room, causing dry skin and dry eyes.
I feel quite drowsy. My skin is also very dry, and it is showing signs of acne.
Extended use of air conditioning brings cold-like symptoms such as headaches, fatigue, indigestion, and nausea. The so-called air conditioning-itis, or legionnaires, is caused by the body's inability to cope with the differences in temperature when moving from a cool place to a warm place or the other way around. Doctors say that our bodies can endure a temperature difference of about 5 degrees Celsius. When the difference is greater, our body reacts by producing heat, which can provoke fatigue and drowsiness.
If the difference between the indoor and outdoor temperatures exceed 5 to 8 degrees Celsius, our bodies will find it hard to adjust, causing immunity levels to drop and increase in the spread of viruses.
When exposed to air conditioning, our bodies can also be affected by a virus known as Legionella, which spreads in dry and enclosed areas and causes fever and nausea. Experts advise people to turn off their air conditioning every 2 hours and open the windows for ventilation for about 5 minutes. They advise people to clean air conditioners or fans properly before use and avoid the cool air from directly blowing towards the body. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The popularity of the Korean wave has spread across the globe, promoting a wide range of the nation's cultural exports from music to movies. Many people want to learn the Korean language as a result, and application developers have been quick to take advantage of the interest. Paulie shows us how Hangul is being developed for this digital generation.
Here in this cafe located in southern Seoul, a group of international students have gathered to take a language lesson in Korean. Each of them are practicing proper pronunciation of Korean characters from a native speaker, all without a single teacher in the room. This new mobile application allows anyone to study Korean from the convenience of their smartphone or tablet PC. The developer modeled the software after the way mothers here teach their own children the Korean alphabet or Hangul quickly and effectively.
이 앱 덕분에 혼자 집에서 공부할 수 있어요. 그래서 너무 재밌어요. 좋아요.
The educational app has been distributed for free to online stores from the United States to India, and the number of downloads has been on the rise.
If you look at the current reviews or similar ratings these days, these apps are garnering high praise among users. In the case of students these days who prefer to study on their own, there are now many more ways to learn a language than in the past.
Many other local developers hope to capitalize on the success of the Korean wave, as more foreigners seek to learn the Korean language from someone with a native tongue. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Why don't we now get a check on the weather with our Lee Ji-yeon standing by at the Weather Center. Good afternoon to you, Ji-yeon.
Well, happy Friday, guys. August is already halfway through. Time flies.
Yes, it really does. Time flies. I'll be glad to see the back of August, though. It's very hot. I've noticed a lot of people are taking the day off today. Things seem pretty quiet here.
Well, I bet the resorts and beaches are crowded with people enjoying their very last-minute summer getaways.
Oh, and if you haven't had a summer vacation, it's okay because next month we have a long national holiday, which is Chuseok, and the weather will be so much breezier and nicer. But not today. We have a blazing weather with lots of sunshine, and temperatures are soaring to their mid to upper 30s across the region. So heat wave warning and advisory have been issued across the country, with the continuous intense heat we've been dealing with is likely to persist today. So expect an extremely hot and uncomfortable afternoon, and even index show almost everybody will feel stressed and irritated, especially from 1 to 4 p.m. In fact, it's been said the numbers of people who got into fights has increased lately due to the weather conditions. So let's try to take it easy. Now, the August heat will continue to bake the nation this weekend, but there is a chance of rain in the capital and the surrounding areas on Sunday afternoon, and it's likely to linger till Monday morning. And after the rain, temperatures will start to ease a bit from next week. Well, right now we are looking at clearer skies compared to this morning, and it will get hotter and sunnier towards the midday. So let's take a look at today's numbers. The capital and Busan will jump up to 33 degrees Celsius, that's 91 degrees Fahrenheit, and it looks like Daegu and Gwangju will have another hot day at 36 and 35. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju, Daejeon, and Dokdo will all hike up to 33, while Mount Kumgang climbs up to 34. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me this week. Have a great rest of the day and wonderful weekend. Now back to you guys in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Jian, for your wonderful weather report there. And those are the stories we're following at this hour. But don't forget, we will bring you the latest on South Korea's proposal for talks on family reunions. And that'll be coming up in our next broadcast at 2 p.m. Korea time.
Thank you for joining us on this Friday here in Seoul. And we'll be back at the same time at noon on Monday.